It's your favorite DCEU apologist here. Hello.
Hello, Adam Ryan Donato.
Hello. Welcome to another hard review, and I am here to talk about the very end of the DCEU. We have officially Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Aquaman 2, whatever it's called. It's out, it's here. The DCEU is over and done. That is 16 movies. I remember being 13 years old. It was the middle of June. I think it was a Wednesday. Went and saw Man of Steel in a theater with my mom, one of the midnight showings or whatever. It was like the premiere showing. I remember staying after the credits because I was such a little Marvel boy thinking anything's going to be after the credits. Now we're here, and it's been such a spectacular journey. Spectacular is a weird word. There's been a lot of ups and downs. I think I have most of these generally positively reviewed. I don't think all of them are very good. I think about half are like objectively like bad. Superhero movies are my jam. That's my favorite thing. That's why I got into movies in the first place. Even when they're at their worst, I'm like, well, I still enjoyed them. But yes, let's focus in on Aquaman here. Now, the first movie directed by James Wan. I love James Wan. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. I grew up with horror classics like Saw and Insidious and The Conjuring. I mean, they're classics now. I guess that was a decade ago. Then he went and did Furious 7, which I wasn't a huge Fast and Furious fan at the time, despite seeing it in a theater. He was given the keys to do Aquaman, and apparently he was given the choice between like Aquaman and Flash, and he chose Aquaman, which especially with the recent Cthulhu movie that we've heard be announced by James Wan, it's clear that there's a love and admiration for the undersea creatures, and it shows through in his movies. I really enjoyed seeing the first Aquaman in theaters when it first came out. I remember I saw it in IMAX with a buddy who his favorite superhero is Aquaman, and so it was kind of like the perfect, like it was opening night and we were all hyped. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 4 at the time, but then when I rewatched the movie a few years later, I was like, this is kind of way too long, and I don't like Amber Heard. The romance is just not working for me at all, and some of it looks really and there's a Pitbull cover of Africa. I do think there's a lot of good stuff in that movie. I do think the action's cool. One thing I really appreciated, which is what made me excited for this sequel, is I love the villains. I love Orm, King Orm, the Ocean Master, and I love Black Manta. I'm a big fan of both Yahya Abdul-Mateen and Patrick Wilson. We know that Patrick Wilson has a history with James Wan being in the Insidious and the Conjuring movies. That being said, I'm not a fan of the Jason Momoa interpretation of Aquaman. I understand why they went in that direction because Aquaman had such a pathetic reputation. I mean, you watch those like DC Robot Chicken specials and he's like the butt of every single joke. Like he's literally the lame guy of the group. So how do we fix that? We make him a badass. We make him really cool. He's like a surfer guy, drinks, and he's got long hair and tattoos. He's super buff. I'm already at like a 3 out of 5 on the first Aquaman. So when the sequel's announced, I'm excited because I'm like, well, I'm invested in the villains. There's a lot of personal beef between both the villains and the hero. We're supposed to see Black Manta now be the main villain in the sequel as he was the side villain in the first movie. Really good structure for a nice little trilogy here, and it'll never be a trilogy, but that's okay. When I first saw the trailer for Aquaman the Lost Kingdom, I was like, oh, that's Thor the Dark World, almost exactly. Aquaman is so closely comparable to Thor anyways, you know, long hair, like godlike king to be in this big fantastical land where they feel like they're superior to humans. Our main guy has a power struggle for who's going to be king with his brother, his kind of adopted half-brother, whatever, who becomes the bad guy, and then in the sequel, he's gonna come back after being like locked up, and he's gonna have to help the main guy on his journey, but can we trust him? I don't know. He's gonna help us. We can't do it without him, but I'm not taking my eye off you. And they do that here, and that's all fun, and Patrick Wilson is actually really funny. There's this thing he does in the movie where he like runs like he's like Naruto running. I noticed it the first time, and I was like, the fuck is he doing? And then later on, he talks about it, and he's like, oh yeah, because he's never ran, so he's like, oh yeah, I'm used to like being in the ocean and doing this, like you don't like, you know, do much with your hands, I guess. So he's just like I thought that was a funny little tidbit. Like it's like, oh, they were thinking about this, you know, there's jokes that they thought of. That's really nice. The badass action here continues from the first movie. I don't know if it's really better than the action in the first movie, but it's really great. It's really cheesy and fun, and we're having a good time with it, you know. Someone said it looked like cutscenes from a video game, and it's like, good. Good. The big dumb Aquaman, epic undersea action, weird creatures and ships and whatnot. That's kind of what this is built for. This is supposed to be like a really, really high budget B movie, I feel like. How did they handle the villain progression on Black Manta's side? That is, I thought that he was kind of boring from a character's perspective. I get it. He hates Aquaman because Aquaman killed his dad and embarrassed him. So now he wants to get all this power to like destroy Aquaman's life. Totally get that. I totally get why Aquaman hates him, because Aquaman hates pirates and this guy's been up his butt, so he really doesn't like him. A lot of this movie, Black Manta has nothing to do besides, I want my power. I want to go get power. I want to beat up Aquaman. That's it. Like, he doesn't really have conversations with anyone besides Randall Park. His character's given a lot more screen time here too, and he's getting a lot more things to do as well. He's given more to do in this movie than Amber Heard is, which thank God Amber Heard's not in this movie very much. She very much so is sidelined, which I think is what's for the best for everybody. I do think there were some moments where Black Manta shined, like there's some really cheesy dialogue during their fights together, and they regularly face off against each other. That's so nice to see in a superhero movie, is developing the beef between the hero and the villain by having them regularly face off against each other, and not just, oh, we face off together at the end. There's literally like a big fight scene between Aquaman and Black Manta in every single act of the movie. That's really refreshing. Another thing I really like about this movie in comparison to the first one is it's about 20 minutes shorter, which I think goes a long, long way into making this feel like a more like brisk. It's epic. I get it. It's epic, you know, but it's also like really, really dumb. So like instead of being like 2.5 hours almost, cutting it down to that 2-hour mark, which usually, alerts me when it comes to superhero movies. Like we have Captain Marvel 2 did that as well, and it's like, oh, why are you not closer to 215, 220, maybe 230? You know, that's usually the movies that they have actual faith in. That's usually what their runtime is at. But obviously we all heard the bad press about Aquaman 2, the press screenings or the test screenings not going very well. Obviously it's the end of the cinematic universe. Jason Momoa is already talking about playing a different character in the new DC universe. Not to mention it's following stinkers like Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, which I love, but most people hate, but I love it because it's like a disaster. So, and then Blue Beetle is like the best of them, I guess, from a public perspective. Even that is like kind of forgettable standard, like it's the same superhero movie we've seen over and over and over again. Aquaman really looms into that dude bro thing here, like he's joking around the entire time. He's a dad, but he's also trying to be king, and he's trying to do good things. There's a lot of Black Panther here as well, because there's the whole debate going on about whether or not Atlantis should reveal themselves to the public. So it's kind of like a combination of Thor, The Dark World, and Black Panther. There's a lot of weird sea creatures in this movie, and they're really awesome. There's one played by Martin Short, who reminds me of Boss Nass. Like, they literally exactly where they are looks just like where Boss Nass is, like, posted up in The Phantom Menace. And he also talks really weird, and they're also, like, trying to work out, like, a deal with this, like, group that they don't really trust. I really appreciate that. There's a character who's just an octopus. Oh, and there's also a character who's just a big crustacean guy, and he's really funny as well. Like, there were several moments where I laughed out loud because of both these characters. There's a lot of, like, scary creatures, too. Like, there's, like, the people of the Lost Kingdom, like, the Knights of the Lost Kingdom, like, whatever the fighters are, the pawns, and they're like really like scary, like black skeleton creatures with like bright green glowing eyes and like green smoke coming out of them. It's really neat. It's really scary. It kind of reminds me of the first movie when there was those creatures. They're in the mini boat and they're surrounding them. Aquaman has to get away, and there was supposed to be a whole movie about those creatures or something like that, and that totally got canceled. That's why James Wan, I'm like, okay, he clearly is all about this water stuff. Now that he's doing Cthulhu, I'm like, okay, do your water movie. It's okay. Yeah, there's some cool shots in this movie. There's also some really awful shots in this movie. The cool shots are shots where it's like, James Wan, you're a good director. And the bad shots are like, oh, that CGI. Like, I just don't like the design of a lot of the way that this world looks sometimes. It's brisk and it's fun, and I had a really good time with it. It was nice seeing the DCEU go out with one where I could kind of smile. I feel like in my heart, The Flash is truly the end of the DCEU. What a perfect middle finger way to end such a rocky franchise. The last moment of this movie also reminded me of like not only Black Panther but also Iron Man as well. It was kind of poetic, you know, because the DCEU has always been two steps behind the MCU. So for them to end their franchise the way that the first movie in the MCU ends, such a poetic, like, you guys have no idea what you're doing. You've never had any idea what you're doing. You're really just trying to copy the stuff that the Marvel movies are doing, and you're doing them so obnoxiously wrong. You're misunderstanding why they succeeded in the first place. For them to end it like that, it's like classic DCU. This whole franchise is summed up in one little scene, and it was like fun. It was a fun little scene. And a lot of people make fun of there's like a mid-credit scene in this movie, and that was really funny in like a ew kind of a way. And people were like, yep, that disgustingness is exactly how I would like to leave this universe's taste in my mouth in, I guess. I really wanted to give this a 4, but I feel like over time it's gonna get worse. It's one of those, it's kind of like Doctor Strange 1 and 2 compared to each other, where it's like, okay, the first one I feel like is the better movie, it's the more well-received movie, but the second one is the one that I enjoy more and the one that I think works better. But I'm also just not super huge fans of these characters, so I'm not really the authority on Aquaman. I can just tell you, as someone who loves superhero movies, I've seen every single DCEU movie multiple times. I watched them all this year in honor of the ending of the DCEU. I remember I had to watch Black Adam last because I just watched it last year. So I'm like, I'm done with Black Adam. Like, that's a movie you only need to watch once anyways. At the beginning of the year, I'm like, I'm just gonna wait on Black Adam. And also, yes, I do count Justice League and the Snyder Cut as 2 separate movies. Zack Snyder still directed half of Justice League, but you get what I'm saying. Where does this rank in the DCEU for me? I don't know. I actually have this at the number 7 spot, just ahead of the first Aquaman movie, but just behind Wonder Woman, which I'm a little lower on than your average Joe. But you gotta remember, most of the DCEU for me are like 3-star movies, which, by the way, 3-star movies are like the worst thing that a superhero movie can be usually. I mean, no, there's not, because 2 and 1 and 0 are obviously worse. But I love superhero movies, so if I'm coming out of it giving it a 3, I'm like, like, I still like it on principle, but like, there's things I don't love about it. But this is the opposite. It's like, this is supposed to be terrible, and it was actually pretty kind of fun, so I enjoyed it. And while I may not have always been a big fan of Aquaman, and specifically Jason Momoa's Aquaman, I'm happy that I was introduced to this character on the big screen via James Wan, one of my favorite filmmakers. I'm so happy he's done with this franchise so he can go do whatever he wants. This is a 3 out of 5. If anyone tells you this is like a bad movie, if you think it's a 2 out of 5, that's fine. And if you think it's worse, that's fine as well. I just think that, like, you're a Marvel, like, shill if you're like, ooh, this is bad, but you like some shit like the Marvels or Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania or anything like that. Like, this is like on par or better with that kind of stuff. People just want to celebrate the end of the DCEU, and I'm mourning it. But I'm happy and hopeful, thankful that it went out on to what to me is a positive note. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what your favorite movie in the DCEU is. Real quick ranking, I will throw it out for you guys. I got the Suicide Squad at the number 1. James Gunn, you are amazing. It's not even close, by the way. Birds of Prey at the 2. I'm a really big fan of that movie as well. It's all down to the egg sandwich. If you don't like the egg sandwich, you don't like that movie. The Flash is a personal favorite of mine. That's where we end the 5-star movies. I used to have Wonder Woman 84 out of 5. That's at the 4, but I moved it down to 4 stars because I'm trying to limit the amount of 5-star movies I get out. I'm sorry. I love movies so much all the time. Oh, geez. The next 4-star movie is the Snyder Cut at the 5, followed by Wonder Woman. Those are my only 4-star movies, and that's at the 6. 7 and 8, we have Aquaman 2 and Aquaman 1. 9, Shazam. 8, Man of Steel. 10, Blue Beetle. 11, BVS. 12, Black Adam. 13, Shazam, Fury of the Gods. 15, Justice League. And 16 is Suicide Squad. And by the way, I am a fan of the extended cut. If I'm watching Suicide Squad, that's what I'm watching. And if I'm watching BVS, I'm watching the ultimate cut, which is what I did this year. So gave a decade of my life and care into this franchise, and it's for the best that it's over. Madam, just one kiss.